Hi, so I wanted to welcome everybody. We're just going to take another minute or two and let a few more people join before we actually start. But thanks for joining. Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thanks everybody for joining. In the chat, you should see a link to the slides and to a Google Doc that we can use for collaborative notes. So please feel free to put notes into the doc. If you have questions, there's a question mechanism within the GoToWebinar. So I see Daniel asking a question of hello, which doesn't really seem like a question, so I'm going to delete it. Okay. But hello, Daniel. So we'll go ahead and get started. If anybody does have a problem with the link to the collaborative notes, it could be that the period on the end, if that gets included in the link, won't work, so you'll just need to take the period off. It doesn't look like it's there, but I know some people have had an issue. Okay, so let's go ahead. This is the Fair for Research software working group that we're in the process of starting, and this will be our first meeting to talk about it. Again, collaborative notes. There are two different versions of this that are going on. There's the one that's now in the very early morning Australia time, and then there will be one that'll be much later Australia time, but probably more convenient for some people in Europe. Again, the slides are available. The way we're doing this is that everybody that's an attendee should be in listen-only mode. If you ask questions in the question box or raise your hand, we should be able to see you and unmute you or answer your question, depending on if it's typed or if you want to speak. We are recording the session, and we'll be making this recording public. So we're going to just talk briefly, which we've been doing, about housekeeping. I'm Dan Katz from University of Illinois. I'm chairing the first session. Michelle Barker will be chairing the second session, again, in 12 hours or something like that. We'll do a little welcome and then talk about 4 different subgroups that we're going to have, and then see what people want to talk about based on that, what questions you have, and then we'll wrap up. So to get started, the working group that we're talking about here, Fair for Research Software, is being jointly convened under 3 different organizations. This is a RDA working group, a Force 11, actually it's a Force 11 working group as well, and a Research Software Alliance or RESA task force. The intent of this working group is to coordinate a bunch of different community-led discussions and try to come to some consensus from all of those. And what we're intending to do is to define and understand how to effectively apply FAIR principles to research software, so that we can not only define principles, but also adopt those principles and encourage adoption of them. There is a working group case statement that is currently under review by the RDA Technical Advisory Board, and we expect that to finish soon. Sorry, somebody's not hearing audio. Are other people hearing audio? Okay, other people are hearing audio, good. All right, so sorry. We should probably have somebody assigned to do this, but I'm not sure who that is. So I will just answer this question briefly. Okay, sorry. So again, the Fair for Research Software Working Group is intending to, Interesting. Actually, so Michelle, since you're on, can I ask if you can handle questions?
Sure, thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you. So the intent of the FAIR for Research Software Working Group is to basically to do three different things, roughly 6 months apart, and that's more or less according to the RDA plenary schedule, but also according to a schedule of just trying to break things up into pieces and evenly space out those pieces. So the first intention is I'm sorry, can you fix that? To develop a document that defines the FAIR principles for research software. And our goal is to do that in 6 months from when we start. 6 months later, to provide another document that would have guidelines on how to apply the FAIR principles to research software. And then 6 months later, to summarize the definitions, to provide implementation guidelines and adoption examples. So basically to wrap up the two things that came before, as well as to explain experiences that people had with that. And that would be in 18 months. We are going to use subgroups as a method to actually start these processes and to build towards the deliverables. These initial subgroups are going to run from July to September, and there's a URL here that you can use to join any of the subgroups. And even though I'm going to change the slide, this URL is going to be on all the next slides, so you can pick it up there. So the first of the 4 subgroups is one that I'm going to lead. And the intent of this group is to examine the FAIR principles in the context of research software from scratch, not based on pre-existing work. There's a very nice paper that I read a few months ago about this, towards FAIR principles for research software. We are going to try to not look at that and not use that as any guidance, but to just work from scratch. Starting with the FAIR principles for data, the original FAIR principles, and trying to understand what part of those principles apply as written to research software. Those principles are 4 high-level goals and then 15 principles that are grouped under the goals. So some of those 19 things will apply directly, we hope, and some won't. And of the ones that don't, we'd like to understand which of them don't apply at all to research software, and which of them apply to research software at a very high level, but with some different definition or with different details. So the output of this discussion after the 3 months roughly is going to be a new list of FAIR principles for research software, again, based on the FAIR data principles. We can then compare those to the work that was done in this towards FAIR principles for research software paper, see if we come up with the same thing or if we have any differences. We will be working via Google Docs and a video call that'll be about every 2 weeks. And if you're interested in joining the subgroup, again, it's the same form for all the subgroups. Okay. So that's that one. Again, we'll go through all of these, then we'll have time and opportunity for questions. So the next subgroup, Matthias is going to talk about.
Yes, hello. My name is Mateusz Kuzak. I'm a community manager at the Netherlands Science Center. I'm leading the subgroup 2, which is about FAIR work in other contexts, so other than data, FAIR principles for data. And we want to look into already going on projects or projects that are working with FAIR in the context of other things, for example, workflows, computational notebooks, research objects, training materials. And the idea is that so first we want to have an overview. So we're most likely not aware of all those initiatives going on or the research going on around FAIR principles for those different contexts. And so we want to get an overview of that. And then we want to look into the commonalities and differences, challenges that the people who are working on it are facing. And we hope that this will give us better input for defining fair principles for research software. And also, one of the outputs of this group is the guidelines for implementation for principles for research software. So we also hope that it will give us some more input on defining this. And we'll be working with Google Docs and with regular video calls, which will be scheduled. And the same URL is for joining the subgroups. So when you go to this form, you have to define which subgroups you want to join. You can join more than one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Subgroup 3 is on defining research software, and Moran will talk about this.
Hi everyone, I'm Moran Green-Peter. I work for Software Heritage. I'm a software engineer and a metadata specialist at Heritage at INRIA Research Center, and I'm going to lead the research software definition subgroup. The reason we have this subgroup is really reviewing and looking at different definitions of research software and what's the scope of this working group about defining the fair principles of research software. So the basic is just to have the kind of concise community definition of research software. So we'll be looking at different definitions that were already that are already out there and how we want to apply or use them for this working group. And we will be working with the Google Doc, but without any calls for now, at least. Instead of that, we will be chatting on the Gitter chat, which you have the link in the. I will put a link in the chatter because I think that you cannot click this one. So it will be not ongoing all the time, but if we have an interesting subject on the Google Doc, we can have it more lively on the chat. So that is me. And as for the other groups, you should fill out the form on the same form. Thank you. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, thank you. And then the last group will be Neil Chu-Hong will talk about this.
Okay, hello. I think my webcam is not working, so I'm just going to switch that one off there. So my name's Neil Chu-Hong. I work for the Software Sustainability Institute, and I've also been participating in the European Open Science Cloud FAIR working group. And so subgroup 4 is around understanding what's been done in the world already that's been related to FAIR software. So the aim of this group is to look at the recent research and studies that have taken place around FAIR software, including papers, reports, and workshops, and so on. And what we'll be doing in this group is firstly undertaking a desk review, so gathering together all of the work that we know about, ensuring that this is collected and curated in one place. And in this case, the method we're choosing is to put them in the FAIR for Research Software Zotero group, making sure we've summarized the lessons that we've learned from all of these outputs, and then do a rereading of the Towards FAIR Principles for Research Software paper in the light of these new outputs to understand whether the outcomes that we have in that paper have changed at all in the approximately 9 months since that paper was submitted. So all of this is really to understand how people are choosing to use FAIR as it applies to software and come at it from a slightly different angle than the other working groups. In particular, with subgroup 1, the group that Dan's leading is looking at it coming from trying to come up with a definition based on a rereading of the FAIR principles. Subgroup 4 is looking at trying to come up with a definition of the FAIR principles based on how they're currently being applied in practice in many different ways. And I think in particular, what we'll be seeking to do is identify what I'll call FAIR-like work, where there has been work that's been done that's not been explicitly tagged as FAIR, as in the FAIR principles, but is doing things that we would consider to be applying the FAIR principles. So at the end of this, what we hope to have is a Zotero reading list, as I've mentioned, along with a short report on the important insights that we have found from doing this close reading of the different outputs. We'll be working with Google Docs and email and video calls. We'll work out the schedule of the video calls and the timing based on the people who join this particular subgroup. So as everyone else has said, to join, you fill in the form that's linked from there, and once we've got that started, we'll be in touch to understand the right frequency for the calls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neil, and thanks to everybody. Again, as has been hopefully extremely obvious and repeated many times, this is the URL that you can use to join the subgroups. You can join one, you can join more than one. Probably not a good idea to join all of them unless you really have lots of extra time, but that's okay if you want. And at this point, we will really just go to questions. You can either type questions into the question box, which I can't see for the minute, but I will try to find again soon, or you can raise your hand if you want to speak. And again, just to be aware that this is being recorded, so what you ask will be recorded. So.
Then we have a question from Sandra Hessing. This relates to group number 4 for Neil. Will we also aim at a review paper here for subgroup 4?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you for the question, Sandra. I think that wasn't the intention when we first specified the group, but I think if during the group we feel that we have enough to produce that paper and enough effort to do that, then I'm happy to consider it.
All right, question from Daniel, also on group 4 for Neil, I guess. Is the scope going to be narrowed somehow, e.g. use cases to support, or will it be from any domain/science?
So the intention there is that it won't be, we won't be narrowing the discipline areas, but we will want to narrow the scope of what we consider FAIR-like to be. So for instance, there's a lot of work that is around, for instance, how to apply licenses to software projects and repositories, which is an aspect of accessibility and reusability, but is probably, although this is something that we can discuss in the subgroup, is probably a bit far away from FAIR. However, there are some other things to do with better description of metadata that probably are much more closely related to the FAIR principles. So I think the answer there is that we wouldn't seek to limit the scope in terms of discipline area, but that we would want to have an initial scoping discussion around how FAIR-like something needs to be within the scope of this reading. Okay, thank you. There was a question that came from Saranya about the 19 principles. Unfortunately, I can't actually see that it seems like it was answered, but I can't tell if that answer was okay.
Yes, I made them available. Attendees should see the names of all the attendees.
Okay. All right, good. Let's see, there's Moran trying to put her Gitter chat out. Let's see if I can do this. Yes, I can do that. Okay, so I just put this into the chat. There's the link for everybody, hopefully. Are there any other questions that anyone has?
Thank you, Dan.
I don't see any other questions. I'm trying to see if there are hands up. I don't think I see any hands that are up. Okay, one more question from Daniel. For subgroup 2, Matthias, is the scope to produce a recommendation for example, notebooks or workflows, or a general document?
Yeah, so we're not going to make recommendation for notebooks, but we want to learn what is already happening in the research. So there are groups who are looking into FAIR notebooks or FAIR workflows. So we want to see what's there, how it's relevant for our group and the definition of FAIR for research software. So there will be a document where we will see like what are the differences, what is specific for notebooks, what is specific for workflows, any specific challenges, what are the common things that are common for all the different types of how research software is used. Does that answer the question?
Okay, and then another question from Daniel. Will this include specific examples or general guidelines?
So I hope we'll have some specific examples based on, so we'll make an overview, and then in this overview, there will be specific examples.
Okay, let's see, and then a question for me from Paula for subgroup 1. Why did you decide to start from scratch looking and not start from the publication already available? I guess I would say because we wanted in the different subgroups to try to come at this from a range of different points of view. So we have work that's already been done. We have the work that will happen in the other 2 subgroups, I would say 2 and 4, looking at FAIR for software in the context of things that are not exactly software, but are kind of like software and sometimes include software. And 4, looking at all the work that has already been done. And so it seemed like it made sense also to try to not look at the work that's already been done and just go back to the FAIR data principles and see if we come up with the same thing, if a different group of people come up with the same thing, kind of as a, I mean, in some ways you could think of it as a reproducibility check. Okay, any other questions or hands? Sandra is asking, would we also aim at a review paper here? No, I'm sorry, that's an old question. I'm not in the right order anymore. Okay, a question from Paula. Are you looking for researchers to join the subgroups or support staff or RSCs or all? It's anybody who's interested. If you feel like you have something to contribute, some experience, some way of looking at things, or just some time, some effort, we're happy to have anybody that wants to be involved. Sorry, and somebody else was trying to talk, I think. Okay, well, if there are not any other questions, I think we'll declare this done in a shorter time than we thought, but that should be good. Okay, so thanks to everybody for joining. And again, just to go back, this is the URL once again. Sorry, one more question that's just popped up from Paula. When do we plan to start and deadline for joining? I think we would probably try to start in the, I don't know, next couple of weeks roughly. So we're hoping that people will join based on this call and the other call that's happening later today in Australia or tomorrow morning, depending on where you're looking, where you are. And so we'll look and see who responds to these things and maybe I don't know, maybe by the end of the week, we'll assume that we've gotten the people we're going to get, and we'll go ahead and try to schedule the initial activities to go forward. Okay. All right. So again, thanks to everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the survey, in the form, and then we'll be talking with you more individually. And there also will be emails going out to the whole list once this group gets officially approved by RDA, which hopefully should be in another couple of weeks as well. So thanks again, everybody, and yeah, we'll look forward to doing some good work.